Hey guys, welcome back. Listen, we are going to continue our coverage on what has been an absolutely historic week for the memory titans. Guys, it's been a massive week for Micron overall. And you know, if you watched the video earlier this week, we tracked a multi-billion dollar closing cross in the dark pool that set the stage for Micron this entire week. It set the institutional floor at 640, and that floor has been defended over and over this week. And I'm going to show you in a candle pattern chart how it was defended today as well later in the video. But I want to also talk about just the week that Micron has had, because you guys could say, and I'll pull it up, that Kevin, Micron was down today. The sector was down today, and you were right. Micron pulled back almost 3% today. We saw Western Digital pull back almost 4%, and Seagate was down by almost just over 2.5%. You can see on the screen there. But here's the stat that you may not be hearing. Even with today's pullback, Micron was 4x the S&P 500 this week. The stock grew by 16% in the week compared to a 3.8% growth with the S&P 500 index. In fact, SanDisk was 2.5x the S&P, and Western Digital was 2 times the index. Seagate was right on par with the growth of the index, but we know Seagate had some massive weeks coming into this week. So even a little bit of growth for them is still a huge positive sign. Micron has been the massive player this week overall. And I think while most retail investors were looking at red candles today, feeling a bit anxious, feeling a bit nervous, they may have been distracted and missed a huge signal after today's closing bell. We're going to get into it. We're going to talk about that massive Reuters exclusive report tonight that revealed how big tech isn't just buying chips. They are flooding manufacturers with preemptive orders just to have a seat at the table for 2027. We're going to talk and break down that SK Hynix supply shock that came out after the closing bell today. We're also going to talk about the Bernstein Memflation report that hit the street earlier this morning that helped catapult and change the movement or the flow for Micron today in the trading day. We're going to look at Micron's candle signals. What can it tell us? We're going to look at how that 640 floor continues to be defended by the whales. And finally, we're going to review 2 huge signals, one from AMD and one from Nvidia, and why they prove that the memory wall is the only thing standing between these companies and a $1 trillion valuation. So let's get into it. Let's break down the tape. Let's talk about the ground truth of what really happened in the market today. But if you haven't done it already, first, hit like, hit subscribe to the channel. Guys, we're only about 200 subscribers away from hitting that 10,000 milestone on this channel. It would be a huge signal to reach that in the first 5 months of the channel. So if you haven't done it already and you find value in this videos, hit subscribe, be part of the community. Let's hit this milestone together. First, let's get to the biggest news that hit the terminals right after the close. And it was Reuters exclusive on SK Hynix. So let me pull that up. We can walk through it and talk about why it is so bullish for the sector. You can see right here from investing.com that SK Hynix flooded with unprecedented offers from big tech firms to secure chip supplies. Let's scroll down and walk through a couple of the details. First, you can see SK Hynix is being aggressively courted by big tech global firms or big global tech firms, most likely Microsoft and Meta, that's the rumor, to invest in new production lines and to fund purchases of pricey manufacturing tools as they rush to secure memory chips. These offers, unprecedented in the global memory industry, underscore the severity of the component scarcity around the world as chip makers struggle to keep pace with surging demand amid the artificial intelligence boom. Guys, this is a massive sign for the sector overall. I haven't seen this before. When we're seeing big tech firms now making unprecedented preemptive offers to lock in HBM4, to lock in NAND capacity, they're not just placing orders, though. They are offering premium pricing and upfront capital just to ensure they're not left behind. This confirms that the memory wall is no longer a theory. It is a physical constraint. It's a bottleneck in the market. If the biggest companies on earth are desperate enough to flood a manufacturer with upfront cash just to ensure that they can have a seat at the table for 2027 supply. This tells you that the current inventory that we see in the market right now is non-existent. It is scarce out there. It is hard for them to get their hands on the advanced memory that they need. This gives the big three, Micron, SK Hynix, and Samsung, absolute pricing power. When supply is zero and demand is infinite, the manufacturers can charge whatever price they want. And that's what we're seeing in the market. That's why we're seeing such massive margins for these companies right now. And then the second article that came out today came out earlier today, maybe about an hour after the market opened. And quite honestly, I think it is very responsible for reversing the trend with Micron that I'm going to show you in the moment when we get to the candle chart. But it was the article by Bernstein that you see. Bernstein, bullish on memory stocks as DRAM and NAND prices rise. And if I scroll down, you can see Bernstein is bullish on memory stocks after data showed another major jump in memory prices. Both DRAM and NAND contract prices are set for significant increases in the second quarter of calendar year 2026. You can see in the second paragraph here, analyst Mark Lai stated in a note to clients that overall DRAM contract prices in April were 57% higher versus the first quarter. Server DRAM was up 48%, mobile roughly 80%, and consumer was up approximately 60%. But furthermore, NAND contract prices are indicated to rise 65 to 70% quarter on quarter, driven primarily by SSD and mobile NAND packages. So another huge sign, and this did reverse the trend for Micron today. I'm going to show you that overall. But when this news hit, maybe about at 9:30, 10 o'clock hour Eastern, when this report hit, it neutralized, I would say, the overvalued argument that the bears have for this sector. Bernstein is officially raising their outlook because DRAM and NAND contract prices are rising faster than even their most bullish models predicted. Their analyst is calling this memeflation. They are now modeling NAND to rise 60% quarter on quarter and for DRAM to rise about 48%. Bernstein is effectively telling us that the market is still underestimating the earnings per share explosion that we expect to see in the next 4 quarters. When the smartest guys in the room admit that their bull case was too conservative, you know the structural re-rating is still in the early innings with Micron and with the memory sector overall. But now let's get into the tape. Let's actually look to see what Micron did today, because we know, you guys know, we had a bit of a pullback, a 3% pullback in the stock today. It's very healthy, personally, if you want my opinion. We had such vertical moves with this stock. I think all of us were probably expecting to see a little bit of a reset, some profit taking, some algorithmic selling as the stock was pushing forward, particularly today when it set a new 52-week high. You might look on it and say, you know, we closed yesterday at 666. We're down about $20 today. But did you know the stock actually set a new 52-week high today? It pushed over 680. It got to 683 a share. And I'm going to show you that in a moment in candle pattern. But let's just take a look at what we did see. We're down $20, 3% down. If you look over here on the right, there's the new 52-week high, 683.09. But look at the pre-market. Guys, if you were tracking this stock like I was, right after the market closed, you continued to see red on the board. It was continuing to pull back. And when that Reuters article came out on SK Hynix showing the demand, showing that the effort that the big tech firms, the hyperscalers are doing to get a seat at the table, it reversed what we're seeing in the after hours in the pre-market right now. We're up almost 1.5%, closing in on $10 on the board, over 656 now. Significantly better. This is a great sign as we track towards tomorrow's opening bell. Will we see this momentum continue? Will we see the opening bell and start to see Micron grow again and maybe push towards that 680 mark again? Maybe push higher, or at least have a nice strong ramp and positive growth as we head off into the weekend. But let's look at the candle chart and what we did see overall today, some of my key takeaways. You can see where we finished on Wednesday. 666 overall here is where we closed. We did have a bit of a gap down to start today. I think that didn't surprise any of us. It was a lot of red on the board in key tech stocks today, a lot of red on the board in key stocks that had been going vertical recently. Just a bit of a healthy pullback, some profit taking. If you were one of those and you put some cash back in your pocket, don't feel guilty. I'm very positive about that. Anytime that you can pull some house money off the table and put it in your pocket and play with, their money overall and let that stock continue to grow, I think it's a positive sign. But what we did see, we saw the gap down and it pushed down the first 20 minutes right here. It got down to about a low of 640. And this 5-minute candle closed at 650, but then we saw support. And we went flying up to what we call, this is a shooting star here, this 5 candle, because of such a long wick on it overall. And that's the high, the new 52-week high that we achieved, the 683 overall. So the stock found massive support. When it got to that new 52-week high, no question about it, we saw We saw some algorithmic selling. We saw profit taking. Just look at the next kind of a few hours afterwards where the stock pulled down, tried to rally here for a little bit of support, but continued to pull down, had a little bit of rally. And here's where we hit the nadir of the day, the low of the day, 635 overall. This 5-minute window closed at about 639, but we found support, and the stock continued to move and consolidate right at that 640 level. We saw a nice finish in the last 20, 25 minutes, or a little bit of a bullish finish, a nice way to roll into and to close the market, go into the after hours, get ready for the opening bell on Friday. But I think this was a clear sign that that 640 level is still being defended by the bulls, by the whales overall. The volume today was good across the board. It was a little lower than it was in the breakout phase. I think there was 47 million shares traded today from Micron across the board. But the biggest takeaway for me is that RSI at the bottom. We know earlier when this stock was going vertical, that RSI was pushing towards that overextended. It was up, close to that high 70s, 80 time frame. And I typically in a super cycle like we see, you can see an RSI that runs hot. But what we saw today is the bit of a pullback or reset that we saw with the stock gave this a chance to cool off. If you look about midday, you see that RSI get down close into the 30s, the high 30s overall at some point. Really significantly cooled off, and it ended the day, the 14-day RSI ended at 56.28, perfectly neutral. So this is a strong sign to me that the stock is not overbought, not oversold. It's just kind of perfectly balanced. It is ready to start up its next leg. It's ready it's reloaded, we'll say, and it's potentially ready for a strong move on Friday. And I think with that SK Hynix report that we saw and the reversal in the after hours and the positive, the $10 that we see on the board right now, let's go back and see if it changed. Yeah, it's about $9 now. It came down a little bit, but still really positive sign for versus what we saw right at the close. And I think when you also look at Bernstein report and how that reversed right here, that report came out and you kind of see the reversal overall when just a little bit of the whale stepping in to defend that 640 floor. So that's the floor we continue to see as the support for Micron. Let's see if we can break through it tomorrow. I'm going to give you my prediction at the end of the video, but I want to share two more bullish signs that we saw today that I think are great for the sector. First one is from AMD. They announced a new accelerator, an MI350P PCIe AI accelerator. It has massive amounts of HBM3E memory, 144 gigabytes. It's roughly 40% faster than the competition as well. But this accelerator card has a massive impact on the memory sector just because of the amount of HBM3 that you see. So the card itself, it's designed for standard air-cooled servers. So this opens the HBM3E market to the entire enterprise world, not just the elite hyperscalers. And with that amount of 144 gigabytes per card, it is essentially creating a global vacuum for memory. Each one of these cards being sold is more capacity being taken away from the spot market. This is a massive confirmation that HBM3, the demand for that product, is broadening. It is not narrowing. The second bullish signal is another partnership that we see with NVIDIA. It seems like every time we turn around now, NVIDIA has another dance partner. They just partnered with IREN or Iris Energy for a $2.1 billion deal. Let me pull that up and show it to you. You can see on the board here, right at CNBC, that IREN inks AI infrastructure deal with NVIDIA. IREN and semiconductor giant NVIDIA announced deal to deploy up to 5 gigawatts of the chip maker's DSX branded infrastructure designs. And then the third bullet point is NVIDIA has similar deals involving multi-billion-dollar purchase agreements with companies like Coherent, Lumentum, and Corning. So this is just another strategic partnership, really smart partnership, in my opinion, where they are locking up their network providers, both on the optical side and now on the energy side. And it has massive implications for memory players overall as well, because 5 gigawatts of power is useless without the memory to fill those GPUs from NVIDIA. This deal secures a multi-year pipeline for the Blackwell class systems, which are the primary consumers of high-density NAND and HBM3, HBM4 as well. The partnership proves that NVIDIA, it's working to solve the power wall by partnering with Iris Energy, which will only increase the pressure on the memory wall. It's a symbolic bull case More power leads to more GPUs, which leads to desperate need for Micron and for SanDisk Silicon overall. So bullish sign for the two stocks that we love and follow on this channel as well. Bullish sign for the sector as well. So AMD and Nvidia, I think, also help the case for Micron heading into tomorrow to help the case for the sector overall. But guys, today was a gut check for the sector. We saw a little bit of red on the board, a little red candles. It feels like it's been a while since we've had that position. But the data that we just went through is unequivocal. The biggest players in tech are in a bidding war for the products that these companies make. While we closed today at 646, just under 647 overall, the daytime noise is over and the stock is currently sitting at about 553 right now in the after hours. That is the only number we need to care about right now. It shows us that even after a 3% dip and a massive intraday shakeout, the whales are holding firm at that 640 support level, and we're seeing momentum start to push the stock back up over 650. If we open tomorrow and stay north of that 645, if we stay north of the 650 level we're holding right now, the message is clear. The big players aren't waiting for a deeper dip. They're loading up right here because we expect the supply chain headlines to get even more aggressive over the weekend. Plus, the Bernstein Memflation thesis is now acting as a fundamental anchor. And the RSI that I've reviewed, it is successfully reset to a healthy 56. We are not looking at a breakdown, in my opinion. We are looking at a structural reload for this stock. We're looking at a structural reload for the sector. So don't let a few red candles blind you for where the money is actually sitting right now in the market. Don't let the few red candles blind you from the fundamentals of these companies and this sector overall. Guys, if you found this video helpful and it provided some clarity to you while the market did some flushing today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. As I mentioned in the beginning, we are about 200 subscribers away from hitting that 10,000 milestone. And it looks like we may cross it before the weekend, which would be absolutely outstanding news. And I appreciate each and every one of you all of your support. So thank you for your engagement. Thanks for being part of this channel. And I'll see you guys at the opening bell tomorrow. Take care.